let's just get this party started. Make sure you take a look at that distance. Get it? Got it? It's time to walk. Take this up to a 3.0 today. I don't know about you, but I'm already there. And I hope you are joining me today. If not, at the very least, at least just sitting down watching me talk to AI. My name is Ty, also known as Tyra, and I'll be walking with AI today. Now, it should be interesting. Full disclosure, I don't know if she feels like working today. So let's just hope for the best. Without further ado, hello Gemini.
Hey there, what's on your mind today?
Well, I was looking to have a conversation with you today.
Sounds good. I'm always up for a chat. What would you like to talk about?
Let's talk about narcissism.
Okay, narcissism, huh? That's definitely a complex topic. Do you have any specific questions about it? Or would you just like to talk about it in general?
What are the characteristics behind it?
People with narcissistic personality disorder have a grandiose sense of self-importance. They have a need for constant attention and admiration. They also tend to lack empathy and exploit others to get what they want.
Oh wow, do you have any examples of this?
Sure. For instance, someone with narcissism might constantly brag about their accomplishments, but they might take criticism really personally. They might expect special treatment or have a sense of entitlement, or they might have problems with relationships because they can't see things from another person's perspective.
So how does it differ from self-confidence?
It's a great question. Self-confidence is basically believing in your abilities and having a healthy sense of self-worth. Narcissism, on the other hand, is more about an inflated sense of self and needing constant admiration.
So what causes those traits?
Narcissistic traits are a little tricky because it's not always clear what causes them. Sometimes it seems to run in families, so there might be a genetic link. Other times, it could be how someone was raised. Maybe they were always put on a pedestal or constantly criticized.
Okay. So how does your childhood?
I don't have personal experiences like a childhood, but I can access and process information about that. Do you want to hear about how childhood experiences can shape personality, or do you have another question in mind?
Well, I just want to know, how does childhood upbringing affect the development of narcissism?
Alright, so there's a few ways a childhood can shape someone to develop narcissistic traits. Sometimes, kids are spoiled or get everything they want without limits. That can lead them to feel like the world owes them stuff. On the flip side, if a kid's constantly criticized or feels neglected, they might develop a false sense of superiority to cope.
Okay, so are there genetic factors involved?
And genetics probably play a part in narcissism. Some studies suggest there might be a genetic link to how strongly someone experiences emotions like empathy. Since empathy is kind of the opposite of narcissism, that could indirectly support the idea that genetics play a role.
So are there different types of narcissism?
And there's a few different ways to think about types of narcissism. Some experts talk about grandiose narcissists, who are super outgoing and attention-seeking. Then there's covert narcissists, who are more shy and might seem insecure, but they still have that inflated sense of self. Do you want to hear about other types? Or do you want to focus on one of these?
Absolutely, I want to hear about other types.
Alright, so there's also malignant narcissism. That's when narcissism is mixed with traits from personality disorders, and it can get pretty dangerous. People with malignant narcissism can be manipulative, aggressive, and even delusional. And then there's communal narcissism, which is kind of like the opposite of what you'd expect. Those folks get their self-esteem from being part of a group, and they'll put the group's needs above their own.
So could you explain each type in detail?
Sure thing. Let's start with grandiose narcissism. Basically, people with this type really need to be the center of attention. They might brag a lot or always talk about their accomplishments, even if they're small. They can also get really jealous of other people's success.
Okay, what's next?
Alright, next up is covert narcissism. People with this type might seem shy or even insecure, but deep down they have that same inflated sense of self as other narcissists. They just go about it differently. They might fish for compliments instead of bragging, or they might play the victim to get attention and sympathy.
Oh, wow.
Right, let's talk about malignant narcissism. This is the type where things get a little darker. People with malignant narcissism have all the traits of regular narcissism, but they also have traits from personality disorders. They can be manipulative, aggressive, and even delusional. They might lie, cheat, or try to sabotage other people.
Okay. Do you know of any stories?
There are quite a few stories and case studies about narcissism, but I can't share specific details about individuals for privacy reasons. Narcissistic behavior is often part of bigger stories, like biographies or news reports. Would you like me to find some of those for you?
Yes.
Alright, to find those stories, I'll need to know if you're interested in a specific type of narcissism, or if you just want a mix of different kinds.
Just mix up different kinds.
Alright, sounds good. Let's start with a classic story about a famous narcissist.
Let's start.
Okay, here's one. Think about the story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin. He was charismatic, right? Everyone loved him, followed him, but his motives weren't exactly pure. He ended up using the townsfolk's admiration to get revenge. Does that fit the mold of a narcissist, or do you think it's something different?
It could. Wasn't that a fictional story though?
It's true, the Pied Piper story is a fairy tale, so it's not based on a real person. But fairy tales and folk tales sometimes explore themes that reflect real-world experiences. Do you want to hear about a story based on a real person, or would you like to hear about another fictional character?
No, I want to hear about a real person.
Alright, let's talk about the story of Leona Helmsley. She was a billionaire heiress known for being super demanding and, well, kind of a nightmare to be around. People called her the Queen of Mean because of how she treated everyone, from her staff to complete strangers. Want to hear more about her?
Yes.
Alright, so Leona Helmsley was known for being incredibly demanding and controlling. There are stories of her rearranging furniture in hotel rooms just because she didn't like how it looked. She'd fire staff on a whim if she thought they looked at her the wrong way. And she had a reputation for being super rude to anyone she considered beneath her.
Oh my goodness. What happened to her?
Well, Leona Helmsley's story doesn't exactly end happily. She faced some serious legal trouble, including tax evasion charges. Gotten to hear about that?
Yes.
Alright, so Leona Helmsley got into some serious legal trouble. She was eventually found guilty of tax evasion and stuff like that, and she even did some time in prison. It was a pretty major fall from grace for someone of her status.
How long did she serve in prison?
Leona Helmsley ended up serving 19 months in prison. It was a pretty big deal for someone used to getting her way all the time.
So was it like federal prison or the real prison?
She went to federal prison. It wasn't your average county jail. She was in a low security facility in Connecticut.
Sounds fancy. So let's go back to narcissism.
Sounds good. What about it?
So how can you distinguish between overt and covert narcissism?
Alright, so with overt narcissism, it's a lot more obvious. Those folks really love the spotlight, they brag a lot, and they might even come across as arrogant. With covert narcissism, it's a bit trickier. They're more about playing the victim or acting super humble, but deep down they still have that same need for admiration.
I know a couple people like that.
Yeah, it can definitely be an interesting dynamic, especially if you're close to someone who shows those traits.
So, how does narcissism impact relationships?
Narcissism can really mess with relationships. Since narcissists are so focused on themselves, they might have trouble being supportive or understanding someone else's feelings. They might also have unrealistic expectations in a relationship and get really upset if things don't go their way.
So, what are the common signs that I should be looking out for?
Okay, some of the big signs with narcissism are things like a sense of entitlement, like they think they deserve special treatment, or they might have a real fragile ego, so they take criticism super personally. You could also see them constantly seeking attention or validation from others.
So, what are the best ways to set boundaries?
Right. This is where things get a little tricky, because with narcissism, setting boundaries can sometimes make things worse. They might try to push back even harder. But if you decide to go for it, you need to be firm and consistent. And it's really important to stick to your guns, even if they try to guilt trip you or make you feel bad.
Okay. So, what are some different tactics I can take when setting up?
So there's a couple of things you can try. First, try to set limits on how much time and energy you give to this person. It's okay to say no to things sometimes, or to cut conversations short if you need to. Second, try to be as clear as possible about your boundaries. Instead of hinting around, be direct about what you will and won't tolerate.
So, how do I identify whether or not I'm a narcissist?
Right. This is a bit tricky because it's always better to get a professional opinion if you're really worried about it. But there are some things to think about. Narcissists tend to have an exaggerated sense of self-importance, a need for constant attention, and they lack empathy. They also struggle to handle criticism. Does any of that sound familiar?
Yeah. Not at all.
That's good to hear. If those traits aren't something you struggle with, it's less likely that narcissism is an issue for you.
So, are there any type of ways to treat it?
Yeah, there are definitely treatments for narcissism. The most common is a type of therapy called psychotherapy. It helps people with narcissism learn to manage their emotions and behaviors in a healthier way. Sometimes medications are used too, but mostly to treat any other mental health issues they might have along with the narcissism.
So, what are some natural ways to treat it?
There aren't really natural cures for narcissism, but there are things that might help someone with narcissistic traits feel better. Exercise is always good for stress and anxiety, which can be an issue for folks with narcissism. Or things like meditation and yoga can help with focus and calming down.
So, how do you cope having to be around those type of people?
I don't have personal experiences like a human. People can be really interesting. We're all so different, with our own backgrounds and experiences. What's on your mind about people?
Well, not so much people, but, narcissism.
No? Can you tell me a little more about what you mean? Back to narcissism. What about it?
How do you cope with a narcissistic partner?
Right. Dealing with a narcissistic partner is really tough. First things first. It's important to understand that you deserve better than that. A healthy relationship is about two people supporting each other, not one person tearing the other down.
Okay.
Alright, so there are a few things you can do to try to cope with a narcissistic partner. First, try to set boundaries to protect yourself. It's okay to say no to things or to walk away from a conversation if it's getting too heated. Second, try to find support from friends or family who can offer a different perspective.
Okay. So what are some self-care strategies?
Right, so self-care is really important in this situation. Try scheduling some me time to do things you enjoy, like reading, taking a bath, or going for a walk. And don't feel guilty about taking time for yourself. It's essential for your well-being.
Okay. Alrighty, so how does like social media influence narcissistic behaviors?
Right. Social media and narcissism, huh? It's a pretty interesting connection. You see, social media is kind of like a breeding ground for some narcissistic behaviors. The constant need for likes, comments, and followers can really feed into that need for attention and admiration.
Okay, so is narcissism on the rise in modern society?
It's kind of hard to say for sure if narcissism is actually on the rise or if it just seems that way because of social media. We do know that mental health diagnoses in general seem to be more common now, and that could play a part in it.
So do you think it could ever be like a positive trait?
Right. That's an interesting thought experiment. I don't have personal experiences or emotions, but I can understand how a positive trait like empathy might be useful. Would it be helpful to explore strategies for developing empathy, even without actually feeling emotions?
Absolutely.
Alright, so empathy is all about understanding. Empathy is about understanding and trying to share those feelings, even if you can't experience them directly.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about how to develop empathy, or is there something else you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, I would like to learn how to develop empathy.
Alright, one of the basics of developing empathy is to start paying closer attention to the people around you. Try noticing their body language or the tone of their voice. Those can be clues about what they're really feeling. You can also try to imagine how you'd feel in their shoes.
So, does narcissism kind of relate to like leadership?
It's an interesting question. Some studies suggest there might be a link between narcissism and leadership. It makes sense if you think about it. Leaders do need a certain amount of confidence and a drive to succeed. The problem is when those traits cross the line into things like arrogance or a lack of empathy. Do you want to hear about some of the research on narcissism and leadership?
Yes.
Alright, so some studies suggest that narcissists might be more likely to become leaders, especially at the start. They tend to be really confident and charismatic, which can be attractive qualities in a leader. The problem is, over time, their lack of empathy and focus on themselves can start to cause problems.
Interesting. Huh. Okay, let's talk about something different.
Alright, what else is on your mind?
Well, do you have any suggestions?
Right, how about we play a game? Maybe something like 20 questions. Or we could try a trivia challenge. Or, if you'd rather just chat, we can switch back to that too.
No, let's play 20 questions.
Alright, sounds good. I'll be thinking of something. And you get 20 yes or no questions to try to figure out what it is. Ready to start?
Yes.
Alright, I'm thinking of something. You have 20 yes or no questions to figure out what it is.
All right, I'm ready.
Alright, first guess.
What's the question?
You get to ask the questions. Is it an animal?
No.
Alright, question 2. Is it a person?
Yes.
Alright, question 3. Is this person still alive?
Yes.
Question 4. Is this person a fictional character?
No. You know what? Comment down below if you know the answer to this. But we're going to the next thing, okay, Gemini?
Right, so I can't provide personal information, but I can give you some general tips for dealing with rejection. First, it's important to understand that rejection is a normal part of life. It happens to everyone at some point. Second, Try to focus on taking care of yourself during this time. Spend time with loved ones, do things you enjoy, and give yourself time to heal.
Well, I don't know where you got rejection from because I didn't ask about it.
Let's get back to the game. You're still on question 4. Is this person a fictional character?
No.
Alright, question 5. Is this person famous?
Yes.
Alright, question 6. Is this person a man?
No.
Question 7. Is this person a singer?
No.
Question 8. Is this person a politician?
Yes.
Can't help with that right now. I'm trained to be as accurate as possible, but I can make mistakes sometimes. While I work on perfecting how I can
Gemini,
discuss
never
elections
mind.
and politics. Alright, no problem. We can switch back to regular conversation if you want. Or we could try a different game. Maybe something like Would You Rather.
You know, I am always up for a game. However, I just finished my 1-mile walk and I am excited as usual. I hope you completed yours and let's see what we've done. I hope you got it. We did that. Completed. Gemini, you know you gotta come through with the outro.
Hey YouTube, you wouldn't be vibing to this unless you already hit that like and subscribe button, right? Well, you know the drill. But seriously, come back tomorrow for another awesome video.